What if I told you that some people never really leave their workplace, even after death? Tonight, I'm going to share a story that will make you think twice about working a night shift alone. This is a tale of Sarah Chen, a woman who thought she was just taking a simple security job to pay the bills. She had no idea she was about to become the bridge between the living and the dead. Before we dive into this chilling story, I need you to do something for me. If you're listening to this alone in the dark, you might want to turn on a light. Trust me on this one. And if this story gives you goosebumps, if it makes you look over your shoulder, or if you find yourself checking your own workplace a little differently tomorrow, make sure you stick around until the very end. Because what Sarah discovers in that office building will change everything you thought you knew about the afterlife. Are you ready? Because once we start, there's no turning back. And remember, some doors once opened can never be closed again. Sarah Chen adjusted her name tag for the third time as she stood outside the imposing glass doors of Meridian Office Complex. The building stretched 23 floors into the Seattle sky, its windows reflecting the orange glow of streetlights in the early evening darkness. She checked her phone, 10:47 p.m. Her first night shift as a security guard was about to begin. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, the same word she'd been repeating since losing her teaching job 3 months ago. The divorce had drained her savings, and this job, though not ideal, paid well enough to keep her small apartment. The lobby was pristine, all marble floors and modern furniture that looked untouched. Behind the security desk sat Marcus, a heavy-set man in his 50s with kind eyes and graying temples. He looked up from his newspaper and smiled. "You must be Sarah. I'm Marcus. Been working nights here for 8 years. He stood and extended a weathered hand. "Welcome to the graveyard shift." Sarah shook his hand, grateful for the warmth in his voice. "Thanks. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous. I've never done security work before. Nothing to it, really. This place is quiet as a tomb most nights." Marcus chuckled at his own phrase, then seemed to catch himself. Poor choice of words. "What I mean is, it's usually peaceful. The building's got excellent security systems, cameras, card access, the works." He led her around the desk, showing her the bank of monitors displaying feeds from throughout the building. The screen showed empty hallways, vacant offices, and the occasional janitor's cart. "The cleaning crew works until about 2 a.m. on weekdays," Marcus explained. "After that, it's just us. I patrol floors 1 to 12. You take 13 to 23. We do rounds every 2 hours, check all the doors, make sure everything's secure." Sarah nodded, trying to memorize the layout on the monitors. "What about the cameras? Do we monitor them constantly?" "Keep an eye on them, but don't stare at them all night. They'll drive you crazy. Every shadow starts looking like something it's not." Marcus's expression grew slightly serious. The human mind plays tricks in the dark, especially when you're tired. As if on cue, one of the monitors flickered briefly. Sarah glanced at it, but the image steadied, showing the same empty hallway as before. "Does that happen often?" she asked. "Sometimes. Old building, old wiring. IT comes in every few months to check the system." Marcus gathered his keys and radio. "Speaking of which, here's your radio and master key card. The key opens everything except the executive suites. Those need special authorization." Sarah clipped the radio to her belt and pocketed the key card. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. She was now responsible for 12 floors of corporate offices, alone in the dark. "Any other rules I should know about?" she asked. Marcus paused at the elevator, his finger hovering over the call button. "Just trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore it. And if you need anything, radio me immediately. I know this building like the back of my hand." The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and Marcus stepped inside. "I'll be back at 7 a.m. for shift change." "You'll do fine, Sarah. Just remember, it's always quieter than you think it should be, and nosier than you'd expect." The doors closed, leaving Sarah alone in the lobby. She took a deep breath and returned to the security desk, settling into the chair that still held Marcus's warmth. The monitors glowed softly, showing the same peaceful scenes from throughout the building. At 11:30 p.m., Sarah decided to familiarize herself with her floors. She took the elevator to the 13th floor, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway despite the carpeting. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, and she found herself walking more quickly than necessary. Each floor was laid out similarly, a central elevator bank surrounded by office suites, break rooms, and conference rooms. The higher floors housed the more important executives, with larger offices and better views of the city. By floor 18, Sarah had developed a rhythm. Check the doors, scan the corners, listen for anything unusual. The building was indeed quiet, but Marcus had been right about the noise. The structure seemed to breathe around her, settling sounds, the hum of HVAC systems, the distant rumble of elevators moving between floors. On the 20th floor, she paused. Had she heard something? A soft sound, almost like footsteps, coming from the direction of the conference room. Sarah stood still, listening intently. The sound came again, definitely footsteps, but lighter than hers. "Hello," she called softly. "Cleaning crew?" No response. The footsteps stopped. Sarah approached the conference room carefully, her hand instinctively moving to her radio. The door was closed, and through the frosted glass, she could see the room was dark. She tried the handle, locked. She used her key card, and the door clicked open. The room was empty, chairs pushed neatly under the long table. The city lights beyond the windows provided just enough illumination to see that nothing was disturbed. "Just building sounds," she murmured, but her heart was beating faster than it should have been. By 1 a.m., Sarah had completed her first full patrol of floors 13 to 23. She returned to the lobby feeling more confident, though the incident on the 20th floor lingered in her mind. Marcus had been right. The building did make strange noises. She settled back at the security desk and focused on the monitors. The cleaning crew was still working on several floors, their movements clearly visible on the cameras. She found their presence comforting. At least she wasn't completely alone. Her radio crackled to life. "Sarah, you there? Here, Marcus. Everything okay? Just checking in. How was your first patrol?" Sarah hesitated. "Fine. Thought I heard something on 20, but it was nothing. The building's pretty noisy." "That it is. These old places have their own personalities. You'll get used to it." "Marcus, how old is this building exactly?" "Built in 1987. Not ancient, but old enough to have some quirks." "Why?" "Just curious. The architecture seems different on some floors. The upper floors were renovated about 10 years ago. Different contractors, different materials. Create some interesting acoustics." That explained the footsteps. Sarah thought different floor materials could carry sound in unexpected ways. At 1:30 a.m., one of the monitors caught her attention. The camera showing the 16th floor hallway had gone black. Sarah tapped the screen, but it remained dark. She switched to the adjacent camera on the same floor. It worked fine, showing the empty hallway from a different angle. She made a note to report the camera failure and continued monitoring. These things happened in old buildings. By 2:15 a.m., the last of the cleaning crew had finished their work. Sarah watched them gather their equipment and head for the service elevator. Now she was truly alone with the building. The silence that followed was profound. Without the distant sounds of vacuum cleaners and cartwheels, the building seemed to hold its breath. Sarah found herself straining to hear something, anything, that would indicate life in the structure around her. At 2:30 a.m., she began her second patrol. This time, she decided to take the stairs instead of the elevator, thinking the physical activity might help her stay alert. The stairwell was dimly lit, with emergency lighting casting long shadows on the concrete walls. On the 15th floor, she paused. The door to the hallway was slightly ajar, which was unusual. She was certain she'd closed it properly during her first patrol. Sarah pushed it open and stepped into the corridor. The hallway was empty, as expected, but something felt different. The air seemed cooler, and there was a faint smell she couldn't identify. Something like old paper and dust, but underneath that, something else. Something organic. She walked the length of the hallway, checking each door. All were locked and secure. But as she turned the corner toward the executive suites, she heard again soft footsteps, keeping pace with her own. Sarah stopped. The footsteps stopped. She started walking again, listening carefully. There they were, soft, deliberate steps echoing her own movements. But when she spun around, the hallway behind her was empty. "Hello?" she called, her voice stronger this time. "Is someone there?" The silence stretched for long moments. Then, from somewhere ahead of her, came a sound that made her blood freeze, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming on a desk. Sarah's hand flew to her radio. "Marcus, I need you to check something for me." "What's up?" "I'm on 15 and I'm hearing sounds. Could you look at the cameras for this floor?" "Give me a second." "Okay, I'm looking at feeds from 15. I can see you in the hallway, but nobody else. The floor looks empty." The tapping stopped abruptly. "Did you hear that tapping sound?" Sarah asked. "Negative. Your radio's clear. Could be pipes. These buildings have complex plumbing systems." Sarah wanted to believe him, but she'd heard what she'd heard. "I'm going to finish checking this floor and move on." "Take your time. I'm watching the cameras." Knowing Marcus was monitoring gave Sarah some comfort, but the feeling of being watched persisted. She completed her check of the 15th floor quickly and moved to the 16th, where the broken camera created a blind spot. The 16th floor felt different the moment she stepped off the stairwell. The air was colder, and the emergency lighting seemed dimmer. As she walked down the hallway, she noticed that the carpet was different here, older, with a pattern that seemed to shift in the shadowy light. Halfway down the corridor, she stopped. One of the office doors was open, not just unlocked, but standing wide open. Light spilled from within, which was impossible. All the offices should have been dark. Sarah approached carefully, her heart hammering. She could hear something now, a low, rhythmic sound like breathing, but too regular to be natural. As she drew closer, she realized it was a sound of papers rustling, as if someone was shuffling through documents. She reached the doorway and peered inside. The office was empty, but the papers on the desk were moving slightly, as if stirred by a breeze. The window was closed, and there was no air circulation that should have caused a movement. "Marcus," she whispered into her radio, "I need you to meet me on 16. Something's not right." The radio crackled with static. "Sarah, you're breaking up." "Say again." The papers on the desk suddenly stopped moving. The silence that followed was absolute and oppressive. "Marcus, can you hear me?" Sarah's voice was becoming shaky. Static filled the radio, then cleared. "Sarah, I lost you for a minute there. Are you okay?" "I'm on 16. There's an office with the lights on and papers moving. I think someone's here. I'm coming up. Stay where you are." Sarah backed away from the office, but as she did, she heard footsteps again. This time clearly coming from inside the room she'd just been looking into. Heavy, deliberate steps moving toward the doorway. She turned and ran for the stairwell, her footsteps echoing loudly in the empty corridor. Behind her, she could hear the office door slam shut with tremendous force. Sarah burst through the stairwell door on the 16th floor, her heart pounding and breath coming in short gasps. The hallway stretched before her, fluorescent lights humming overhead, casting the same harsh shadows as before. But now everything felt different, charged with energy that made her skin prickle. She pressed her back against the stairwell door, trying to calm her racing pulse. The rational part of her mind searched for explanations. Old building, air pressure changes, automatic lighting systems. But deep down, she knew something was fundamentally wrong. The elevator dinged softly, and Marcus appeared, his expression concerned. "Sarah, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." There was an office with lights on. Papers were moving. I heard footsteps inside. The words tumbled out in a rush. The door slammed when I ran. Marcus looked down the hallway, his experienced eyes scanning for anything unusual. "Which office?" Sarah pointed toward the middle of the corridor. "That one." The door was wide open, and there was light coming from inside. They walked together toward the office Sarah had indicated. All the doors were closed, and the hallway was dark except for the emergency lighting. Marcus tried the door handle. Locked. "This is the office of Jonathan Reeves. He's been dead for 3 years. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Dead. Heart attack. Right here in this office. Actually, they found him at his desk on a Monday morning. Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact. But Sarah caught something in his eyes, a flicker of recognition, as if this wasn't the first time he dealt with something like this. "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" The older man sighed and leaned against the wall. "Look, I didn't want to spook you on your first night, but this building has a reputation. Nothing dangerous, mind you, but active. Active. People hear things, see things, usually on the upper floors. The cleaning crew refuses to work alone up here anymore. They travel in pairs on floors 15 and above." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the building's air conditioning. "And you didn't think to mention this before? Most people never experience anything. I figured you'd be fine. Besides, you need this job, right? If I'd told you the building was haunted, would you have taken it?" He was right, but Sarah felt betrayed nonetheless. What exactly happens here? Nothing violent. Just disturbances, footsteps, voices, lights turning on and off. The security company has had 3 guards quit in the past 2 years, all from the night shift. Great, just great. Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. "Is there anything else I should know?" Marcus hesitated. "There's a pattern. The activity is strongest on the 16th floor, where Reeves died, but it's been spreading. Started on 16. Now it happens on 15, 17, and sometimes 18. "How long has this been going on?" "About 2.5 years. Started maybe 6 months after Reeves passed." Sarah's radio crackled suddenly, making them both jump. Through the static came a sound that made her stomach drop. A voice, barely audible but unmistakably human, saying something she couldn't quite make out. Marcus frowned and pulled out his own radio. "Based on all units, radio check." Only static answered. The voice came through Sarah's radio again, clearer this time. "Help me." Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the radio. "Marcus, please tell me you heard that." "I heard it." His face was pale, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely frightened. "That's new. The voices, they've never been this clear before." "Help me," the voice repeated, and this time Sarah was certain. It was coming from the office behind them, the office where Jonathan Reeves had died. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, backing toward the stairwell. "Wait." Marcus approached the office door, his expression thoughtful. "Sarah, what if someone is trapped? What if there's a logical explanation? You just told me this place is haunted." "I said it was active. There's a difference." Marcus pulled out his key card. "I'm going to check the office." "Don't." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Marcus, I saw papers moving by themselves. I heard footsteps with no one there. Whatever's in that office, it's not alive." The voice came through the radio again, more urgent now. "Help me, please." Marcus looked at Sarah, then at the office door. "I've been working in this building for 8 years. I've heard the stories, experienced some things myself, but I've never heard a voice ask for help before. That's what makes it worse, don't you see? It's escalating. Or maybe," Marcus said quietly, "Jonathan Reeves really does need help." Before Sarah could stop him, Marcus swiped his key card and pushed open the office door. The room beyond was dark, but as they watched, the computer monitor flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the desk. On the screen, words were appearing, typed by invisible fingers. "Can't leave. Trapped. Something wrong." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Marcus, we need to call someone. The police or... help me understand." More words appeared on the screen. "Why can't I go home?" Marcus stepped into the office, and Sarah reluctantly followed. The temperature dropped noticeably, and their breath became visible in small puffs of vapor. "Mr. Reeves?" Marcus spoke to the empty room. "Is that you?" The typing stopped. Then, slowly, more words appeared. "Marcus? Is it really you?" "I'm here," Marcus said, his voice surprisingly steady. "What do you need?" "I don't remember dying. I remember working late, chest pain, then nothing. Now I'm here, but not here, confused." Sarah watched in amazement as Marcus conversed with the ghost of his former colleague. "Mr. Reeves, you had a heart attack 3 years ago. You died in this office." A long pause. Then, 3 years? It feels like yesterday. "That's how it works sometimes," Marcus said gently. "Time moves differently for you now. I've been trying to finish my work, the Patterson account, but I can't remember how it ends." Sarah finally found her voice. "What Patterson account?" "Hostile takeover. They were going to destroy the company, steal pension funds. I had proof, had to stop them." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. "Mr. Reeves, that was 3 years ago. What happened with Patterson?" "Don't know. Died before I could expose them. That's why I can't leave. Unfinished business." The pieces were falling into place. "You've been trying to finish your work all this time?" Sarah asked. "Yes, but I can't remember the details. Everything is fragments. That's why I need help." Marcus thought for a moment. "Mr. Reeves, the Patterson takeover failed. The company survived. Your work was found on your computer after you died. Your colleagues finished what you started." The room grew warmer. The typing resumed, faster now. "Really? They stopped Patterson? The pensions are safe." "All safe," Marcus confirmed. "You did good work, Jonathan. You saved the company." The computer screen flickered, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw the silhouette of a man sitting at the desk. Then the screen went dark. A gentle breeze stirred the papers on the desk one final time, and then everything was still. The office fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere that had weighed on Sarah since she'd first entered the 16th floor lifted like a heavy curtain being drawn away. The temperature returned to normal, and the air felt clean and fresh. Marcus sat heavily in the chair across from the desk, suddenly looking every one of his 50-something years. "In 8 years of working here, I never thought to just talk to him." Sarah remained standing, still processing what she'd just witnessed. "Do you think he's gone? Really gone?" "I think so. He just needed to know his work mattered, that his death wasn't in vain." Marcus shook his head. 3 years he's been stuck here, trying to finish something that was already done. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Then Sarah's radio crackled to life, normal static this time, followed by Marcus's voice as he tested his own radio. "Base to mobile, radio check." "Mobile to base, loud and clear," Sarah responded, amazed at how normal it felt. As they prepared to leave the office, Sarah noticed something on the desk she hadn't seen before. A small framed photo of a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a genuine smile, standing next to a woman and 2 children. "His family?" she asked. "His wife and kids. They moved to Portland after he died. Nice people. I think they'll be happy to know he's at peace now." They locked the office and headed for the stairwell. The hallway no longer felt threatening, just empty and quiet, the way an office building should be at 3 a.m. "Marcus, does this happen often? In other buildings?" "More than you'd think. Old buildings. Places where people spend a lot of their lives. Sometimes they leave an imprint. Usually it's harmless. Sometimes, like tonight, they just need help moving on." They rode the elevator down to the lobby in comfortable silence. Sarah felt strangely drained, as if she'd just completed a marathon. But underneath the exhaustion was a sense of accomplishment. She'd faced something impossible and helped solve a problem that had persisted for 3 years. "So, what do we put in the incident report?" she asked as they settled back at the security desk. Marcus chuckled. "Equipment malfunction. Computer turned on by itself. Probably a power surge. Radio static. Nothing unusual. And the footsteps? The voices. Buildings settling. Acoustic anomalies. You know how it is with old buildings." Sarah smiled. "Right. Old buildings." They spent the next hour in companionable silence, monitoring the cameras and making notes. The building felt different now, not empty, but peaceful, like it was finally able to rest. At 4 a.m., Sarah began her 3rd patrol of the night. This time, she took the elevator without hesitation. The floors felt normal now, just office spaces waiting for their occupants to return in the morning. When she reached the 16th floor, She paused outside Jonathan Reeves's office. The door was closed, and no light seeped from underneath. On impulse, she pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. No typing, no footsteps, no rustling papers. "Rest in peace, Mr. Reeves," she whispered. The remainder of her shift passed without incident. When Marcus returned at 7 a.m. for shift change, he found Sarah alert and smiling. "How was the rest of your night?" he asked. "Quiet, peaceful, exactly what you'd expect from a night shift in an office building." Marcus nodded approvingly. "And how do you feel about continuing with the job?" Sarah considered the question. She'd taken this job out of desperation, but she discovered something valuable in the process. Sometimes the most important work happened in the quiet hours, when the rest of the world slept. Sometimes helping others meant facing the impossible with compassion instead of fear. "I think I'm going to like it here," she said. As she gathered her things to leave, Sarah took one last look at the monitors. The building was waking up. Early employees arriving, lights coming on in offices, the normal bustle of a new day beginning. She thought about Jonathan Reeves, now finally free to rejoin his family wherever spirits go when their earthly work is done. She thought about the cleaning crew, who might find their work on the upper floors a little easier now. And she thought about herself, no longer just a displaced teacher taking any job she could find, but a guardian of the night, someone who kept watch over the sleeping building and all its secrets. The morning sun streamed through the lobby windows as Sarah walked toward the exit. She was tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that came from meaningful work well done. Behind her, the building settled into its daytime rhythm, peaceful and secure. And in the quiet corners where shadows gathered, there were no more restless spirits pacing the halls, no more unfinished business weighing on the air. Just a building full of people doing their jobs, living their lives, and occasionally, when the night shift took over, finding that sometimes the most important work happened in the dark. Epilogue, 3 months later. Sarah had become something of a legend among the building's night staff. Word had spread, carefully and quietly, that she was the one who'd solved the 16th floor problem. The cleaning crew no longer insisted on working in pairs on the upper floors. The building's atmosphere had lightened considerably. She'd also become quite skilled at her job. Marcus had recommended her for a promotion to shift supervisor, and she'd accepted. The pay was better, and she discovered she had a talent for security work. Not just the technical aspects, but the intuitive side. She could read a building's moods, sense when something was off, and more importantly, she'd learned to differentiate between genuine threats and harmless supernatural activity, because there had been other incidents. Minor ones, mostly. A former janitor who occasionally rearranged cleaning supplies on the 8th floor. A secretary from the 1990s who sometimes could be heard typing in the break room on the 12th floor. Nothing threatening, just people who'd worked in the building for so long that part of them had never really left. Sarah had developed a protocol for such cases. First, determine if the activity was actually supernatural or just building quirks. Second, if it was supernatural, try to understand what the spirit needed. Third, help them find closure if possible. It was unorthodox, but it worked. The building management had never officially acknowledged her methods, but the drastically reduced turnover rate in the security department spoke for itself. Sarah had become the unofficial specialist in building atmosphere management. Tonight, as she settled in for another shift, she felt a familiar sense of satisfaction that came with protecting something important. The building was full of life during the day. Hundreds of people working, creating, building their careers and their dreams. At night, it was her job to keep that energy safe and secure. Marcus, now working a different shift, had left her a note. Remember, trust your instincts. Buildings have memories, but they also have hearts. Take care of both. Sarah smiled and tucked the note into her pocket. She had 8 hours ahead of her, 23 floors to patrol, and a building full of stories to protect. It was exactly where she belonged. And that, my friends, is how Sarah Chen went from a desperate job seeker to a guardian of the supernatural. Sometimes the most terrifying experiences lead us to exactly where we need to be. But here's what I want you to think about. How many buildings do you enter every day? How many offices, schools, hospitals, or shops have you walked through without ever wondering about the people who came before you. After hearing Sarah's story, you might find yourself paying a little more attention to those quiet hallways and empty rooms. If this story gave you chills, if it made you question what might be lurking in the shadows of your own workplace, then you absolutely need to hit that like button. Seriously, it helps more people discover these spine-tingling tales, and it lets me know you want more stories like this one. And speaking of more stories, I've got an entire collection of supernatural encounters waiting for you. Tales of haunted hospitals, possessed objects, and encounters with things that should not exist. So smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever experienced something unexplainable at work? Maybe strange sounds, unexplained cold spots, or the feeling of being watched. I read every single comment, and who knows, your experience might inspire the next terrifying tale. Until next time, keep your lights on, stay safe, and remember, not all night shifts are created equal. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them after tonight's story.